So, one, I want to thank you for being here. I speak all over the nation on this. In fact, just this week, I spoke in Phoenix, Chicago, and then Fort Lauderdale, and then flew back here. So I haven't even been home this whole week, and I'm wrapping up my week with you guys. And I have to tell you, I got a special spot in my heart for small business owners. You guys are all entrepreneurs. This is the spirit of this country. What Rocco was talking about earlier, we got to bring this Marine home. This is a big deal, and we're fighting the fight here in California. What's interesting is there are a lot of laws that start here in California, and then they work their way out across our borders into other states. Right now, 6 other states are looking at our CAS program that started here in California, and they're starting to pick stuff out of it and to implement their own. So it's a big deal, not just here in California, but nationwide. People are being sued. What I'm going to talk about this morning is how do you guys literally equip yourselves to protect your businesses? You said you get up in the morning, you like to go to bed a little bit richer than when you first got up. That's the name of the game. How would you like it if all of a sudden California passed a law that said that you have to spend 50 grand and just hand it over to a disabled person before you can get your business license and start selling cars? Well, that's what they're doing when they come and sue you. And here's the deal, and I'm going to explain this in detail. California has a different system than the feds. California, if you call your local building official and have him come out to your building, and you say, hey, Mr. Building Inspector, Mr. Building Official, how's my property look? Am I good with ADA? The first thing that guy's going to do is he's going to pull your folder on your property and look at permit history. If you haven't pulled any permits anytime lately, you're good to go. You're only required to provide level of access based on the last time a permit was pulled or when you first moved into that building. That's it. Now the feds say that all of us were put on notice 25 years ago to always be engaged in readily achievable barrier removal. So you got the building inspector, he shows up your property, he opens up the folder and says, you haven't even pulled a permit for 15 years, you're good to go. He hops in his little Ford Ranger, goes back to the building department. Scott Johnson or any of these other activists that are driving around suing people, they pull onto your property and they count up 45 violations at 4,000 a pop. Now how is this possible? Because the state of California still denies any building official, inspector, any employee, they are not allowed to even talk about ADA. They can only talk about, enforce, and discuss basically Title 24 of the California Building Code. So, well, we got some good news. Title 24 has changed. Okay, so we're going to talk about a few different things. One, I want to just say this. I like open forum. With a group like this, if there's a question that you have, just shoot your hand up. I want to answer it. If we start getting a little bit behind, I need to make up a little bit of time here, and I want to wrap up around 10, allow for some questions and answers, and then I'm going to be back at my table. If you guys have any questions, come see me. We're going to cover a few different things. What's the impact that the 2010 ADA has had on not only California, but the nation? What has the Certified Access Specialist Program, that's CASP, here in California, what kind of impact has that made not only on landlords, but on tenants? So some of you may not own the property that you're doing business on. You may be a tenant. So what do you need to know as a tenant to protect yourself and not knowing if your landlord is even looking at certain things? Or let's say you own the property that you're on and you own other properties and you're a landlord yourself. What do you need to know to protect not only yourself from your tenant, but also to help protect your tenant from any kind of drive-by lawsuit that's going to trickle back to you? And then what can we do to isolate ourselves and our tenants from any kind of lawsuits? Again, any profits we make, they need to stay in our pockets. If we need to put a little bit of money into our properties and bring access, fine. But let's not go overboard, and let's not pay these activists. This extortion money is really what it is, and it's legalized. Let's stay far from that. And I'm going to talk to you about some things that you guys can do that are very cheap and easy. Okay, new 2013 CBC, that came out back in 2014, January. We're always a year behind. I'm part of a group right now called the CASI group, and it's a Certified Access Specialist Institute. And we engage in discussions about upcoming codes and different laws and how does it affect construction, how does it affect inspections and what we're doing out there. There's a lot of change coming in 2016, or actually January of 2017. The new 2016 CBC is going to have a lot of change to it. This 2013 that we're in right now, it's night and day from the original, or from the 2010, the previous code. What's happened is the 2013 CBC was actually modeled by the Department of the DGS, the Department of the Architect, and they took the 2010 ADA model code numbers and they just replicated it. So now if any of you are so inclined, or if any of you have any sleep apnea and trouble sleeping at night, you want to open up some codes and help yourself go to sleep, open up Title 24. You'll get about maybe 4 pages into it, your eyes will gloss over. Here's the good thing though, if you're trying to compare federal and state, now you can do it. Now the codes are the same. But then of course California always likes to stay unique and ahead of the game, so we have special provisions that California, it's unique to California's code, that is up and beyond what the feds call out. Okay, so the DSA used the 2010 to model the new 2000 CBC codes after. This brings full incorporation and implementation of the ADA into the CBC. And this doesn't affect you guys, but any DSA governed projects, any state agencies, now they've got the ability to actually recognize federal standards. And that's the big kicker. Forever, I mean, for as long as I've been in this business and beyond, California has never required any of their architects, civil engineers, plan reviewers, anyone from the city to even recognize the federal ADA. It's always been California, and that's why we have such a mess right now. Okay, so there's 2 different bills, and we're just talking about bills being passed here. We all have to stay diligent about keeping an eye on what these legislators are doing in this state. And I agree, we're in a mess right now. We need some leadership change, we need some rules changed. What we can do though is work with the codes that are in front of us, work with the laws, and work the system. The CASP, which stands for Certified Access Specialist Program, it's not 100% foolproof. It's not a magic wand, but I'm telling you right now, I've been doing this a long, long time. We've got track history with people that have literally had CASP inspection reports done, followed the program, and they are literally isolated themselves from a drive-by lawsuit. Can someone still come to your property and find something? Absolutely. Will you ever be 100% compliant? Never. I had one client down in Southern California. He was compliant 100%, and he got his 100% compliant CASP cert, and it lasted about 6 months until the codes changed. Don't beat yourself up. Don't try to think that you've got to drop all these thousands of dollars into your property and always maintain or try to achieve 100% compliance. You're never going to get there, and it doesn't really matter. What really matters is, have you reduced yourself from that low-hanging fruit basket that these activists like to feed from, and have you provided a good enough level of access that you're safe, you're not creating any kind of fall hazards to mess with any of your customers. I was talking earlier with someone that the Census Bureau comes out with these numbers. Well, right now, 25% of Americans have some sort of disability, whether it's cognitive or physical. So a quarter of our customer base has some sort of disability. Now, some of it is weight-related, diabetes, and the whole 9 yards you see in front of Walmart, all the disabled parking stalls, and how they're always filled up. This is a big deal, though. We've got people with hearing impairments, sight impairments, other physical issues, and even starting at young ages, kids with cancer and other physical disabilities. So it's a big deal. They're growing up in this environment, and their families are going out and shopping, they're going out and buying new cars. Let's at least provide that level of access so those people can come to our properties, shop and buy cars, and we keep ourselves safe. So those 2 Senate bills that came out, the very first one was Senate Bill 1608. That was the creation of CASP. And what they wanted to do was establish this program where individuals, private business owners, landlords, shopping center owners, office complex owners, whatever, they can voluntarily engage with a CASP like myself and have their property evaluated to identify their barriers. And part of this program was identify your barriers, put a dollar amount to it, look back at your resources, be real, and put together a phased plan to remove your barriers ongoing, right? They even say in here, if at any point during the process of trying to comply with new construction standards, if you, the owner-operator, inadvertently destroy the usability of your property or create a financial hardship for yourself, we don't want you to do that. We want you to do what's readily achievable, easily accomplishable, and carried out without much cost and hardship. I call it cheap and easy, okay? So Senate Bill 1608 came out. It started the ball rolling, but everyone thought that we were going to see this huge reduction in frivolous lawsuits. It didn't happen. These activists saw the writing on the wall, they saw what we were trying to do, and they just went around. They changed their tactics. No more Mr. Nice Guy is what I've been told by many activists out there. And I know some of these people personally, and they're not very fun people. Most of them are pretty bitter, and they've got it in their mind, just like you get up in the morning to go work and sell cars and help your clients. These very people get up when we do, and their whole goal, I want 15 lawsuits today. Minimum 15. I'm going for it. And all they do is drive around and look. They even have top 10 lists in their little briefcase or in their pocket where they go around, they go, and they'll literally, the drive-by, it is coined that because they literally can see these violations from the road before they even pull into your parking lot. And I was told by one activist lady up in Sacramento, I didn't have my company shirt on, and I just walked up and acted like I was just a normal, pedestrian. And I said, hey, some construction going on? And here's this lady in a wheelchair with her smart level in a sheath, almost like her sword. And she's got her camera and her tape measure and her little board that's all this big table that's set up and anchored to her wheelchair. And she's out on the public sidewalk in front of a Home Depot, and she's taking pictures, and she's laying her smart level down with her little strap. And I said, hey, what are they doing? Are you going to do some construction? She goes, oh yeah. And so I started talking to her. I go, so what, are you like an engineer? And I could tell what she was. And she's like, well, I guess you could say I'm someone who brings awareness. I bring awareness to business owners. So as I'm talking to her, I'm looking down at her table, and I see her little top 10 list, partial. And I start reading some of it upside down, and so I started asking her questions. She goes, yeah, as I drive down the road, I look for violations, and if I can get 4 or 5 from my list, and it justifies me pulling into the parking lot, if I can find a few more, and I have to park my van and get out, it's over. I got them. That was her attitude. I got them. So it's not about true access for a lot of these people. It's about payday. And real quick before I launch into any more, the SAC-B and the Modesto B, I don't know, late last year ran a 4-week series, and they did this whole story on ADA activists and some of these lawsuits, some of the law firms that are responsible for this stuff. Well, one of my friends who's a defense attorney, she got a call from another defense attorney who told her, you can't believe this, over the last 2 weeks since this run of articles, I've gotten a call from over 30 people who called my office stating that they're disabled and they want to know how they can get into the business of suing people. And she was shocked. She goes, wait a minute. This whole story, this whole run of this article was supposed to bring awareness to all of us of why this is so bad and how to protect ourselves. And instead, we got people that are opportunistic, they're disabled, they're Californians, and they want to know how to jump into the business. This is not funny. These people are serious, and they're going for it. So here's a little statistic for you. In 2013, 936 lawsuits were filed in California for ADA lawsuits. One law firm out of San Jose, the Moore Law Group, they are responsible for 619 of them, and they have 3 clients. One of them is the disabled brother of her husband that owns the firm. So these guys are serious. They go out, they've got their Thomas guides, they've got their marching orders, and they go for it. So what do? Senate Bill 1608, this started it. The key provisions of this bill was to incentivize owners to use a CASP, someone like me, to ensure compliance. How does that work? Well, part of this was court procedures encouraging early resolution. They wanted both parties to come to some type of resolution quickly to reduce the attorney's fees and reduce all the costs and the backlag in the court. There was also clarity in the law that reduces unwarranted damages and fees. Disability Access Commission, this is kind of a joke, but this was something that was created because of this process. All the CASP certifications, they're 8.5 by 11, and they got the big check mark, and then they have the serial number. I have to buy packs of these from the DGS, and they're like $50 each. Well, $1 for each one of these goes to fund this Disability Access Commission. The one thing that they've done that I find value in is that they document and track all the lawsuits that are happening, and then they put them all into an Excel spreadsheet. They go, okay, here's the top 10 items that are most commonly sued for all over the place. And I've got this in here, so I'll share it with you. And oddly enough, 9 out of the 10 are all readily achievable. Cheap and easy. Striping, signage, simple stuff. It's weird. Improved education for inspectors and architects. This raised the bar for all of us that are in this business to stay certified, continuing education, the whole 9 yards. Okay? We still didn't see a real reduction in lawsuits. In fact, we saw it ramp up in some degree, but it was ramped up in a way that was much more ruthless than what we saw before. So Jerry Brown, our great governor, came up with a new law, Senate Bill 1186. He approved it, he passed it. This came out in August of 2012. And it was an emergency amendment that went into effect immediately, and here are the key provisions of this. Mandatory notice to new tenants of the CAS status of the property. This is the one item that is thrown in there to help tenants that are signing a lease. So if any of you have signed a lease on your property and you're sitting there, if you've done this since July of 2013, your lease document should have had a provision in there that stated whether or not that property was inspected by a CAS. If it was, it just says yes, and then the next question is, does it comply? Is it compliant? And and like we talked about earlier, nobody's 100%. So what I tell my clients is, if it's no, just state no, and let that tenant ask more questions if they feel they want to. So that's the one thing. Now, I'll give you a little side note. Best Buy has already hired a CASP inspector to evaluate all their buildings statewide, and for the purpose of coming back to their landlords to push their landlord into making repairs or allowing them out of their lease without any penalties. And what we found is, these are buildings. I got one client down here in LA. He built this shopping center brand new in 2009. You'd think that it would have been built right? All the attention that we've all spent on ADA since even 2000, right? You'd think that this would be built right. Well, Best Buy moved into this brand new building. It was built for them, they're the very first tenant. Here it is, from 2009 until now, they hire this CASP. He comes out and he finds that all these items around the building are wrong. And he finds that things inside the building were wrong. Well, my client, the owner of the building, says, well, wait a minute, I thought there was a provision in the California Building Code that states I don't have to do anything with my ADA until I pull a permit to do some type of modifications or alterations. And I said, that's true, but if you weren't built right to begin with, you can't fall back on that. You were non-compliant from the get-go. Well, the city came out, they chipped it up, they signed it off. Well, how many of you know any kind of government, state agencies that have any level of accountability? I can tell you right now, I've got a standing offer to any contractor or client when I'm out on site. When a building official's coming out to do their final inspection and do their sign-off, I will bet lunch to everyone in the group if that inspector actually pulls out a tape measure at a smart level. I've only had it done once in all my years. They usually get out of their truck and they walk up and they're picking their teeth and they go, they grab a handrail and they look around and they go, yeah, that looks good. And they sign it and they leave. They have no idea what those slopes are. It may look fine, but it's not. And so you got to be careful. So the next one that really had some teeth was they put a ban on demand letters for money and for basically demanding money. What this was for, and you guys probably know about this, people would get this letter saying, hey, I'm Joe, I'm disabled, and I came to your property, you denied me access, and you got 90 days to bring all your items into compliance or I'm going to sue you and take your house and your kids and the whole 9 yards. So this was the scare tactic by many of these activists. Well, this put an end to that. And if anyone ever still gets a letter where it talks about any kind of monetary gain, any kind of monetary settlement or anything in that letter, it's completely illegal. You get a hold of your attorney. The attorney that sent that, the plaintiff's attorney, he can be disbarred. The plaintiff themselves, the whole thing can be thrown out. You can't do that. Any monetary agreements or awards or anything have to be discussed either in person or by the attorneys themselves. The plaintiff can't just send some little demand letter stating that, you know, you denied me access, I'm disabled, and bring it in compliance. So that helps. New provisions to prevent stacking of multiple claims. What this is, you know, I came to your auto dealer on a Monday back in November, and you didn't have a van stall, you didn't have the signage, and you didn't have a ramp up to you had steps up to your sales office, and this is a joke. So I turned around, I left, I never even tried to get out. Then on Wednesday, I drove back by to see if you'd maybe, miraculously installed, a new van stall, and of course it wasn't there. So you denied me access on Monday, Wednesday, then the following week I came back, then 2 weeks later I came back again. Well, now I've come to your property allegedly like 9 or 10 times, and I encountered the same barriers each time. 4,000 per violation per occurrence in California. So now what this does is it says, no, unless you've got certain circumstances, like you live in a rural area and this is your doctor's office, this is the only doctor you can go see, okay, now we'll deal with that. But you could have gone to another car dealer, you could have gone down the road, you could have done anything. And it's not reasonable to expect that business owner would have known that he was denying you access and fix these barriers, or remove these barriers in such a short amount of time, so they can't stack anymore. Reduce statutory damages and litigation protections for defendants who correct violations. This is really only beneficial for small business owners, okay? If you've just got one location, you've got one handicap stall, you've got a curb ramp, you got your building with one door entry, maybe a little unisex restroom, something like that, this is helpful because it allows you to remove those barriers, bring your property into compliance. Most of that might be readily achievable or it might be some expensive stuff. But if you bring all this stuff into compliance within a short period of time, then what this code does is it reduces from the 4,000 down to 1,000. Well, it's beneficial for people that have small little properties that maybe they can do that quickly, but big, shopping center owners, office, light industrial, I've got clients that, they have $180,000 worth of barriers on their property. They're not going to go remove all that in 90 days just to save $2,000. They're going to go ahead and foot the bill. They're going to pay that fee. They're going to get out of it. They're going to fix whatever they need to fix under the settlement agreement, and then they're going to put together a plan that we're going to talk about. So new pleading with specificity requirement for demand letters. That's what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where you can't put demand for money. But this talks about now that you've identified a barrier, you can't just say, hey, I'm disabled. You denied me access. How? Where? What's your disability? Are you in a wheelchair? Are you sight impaired? Hearing impaired? What's the deal? I don't know what your disability is. Therefore, I don't even know how I denied you access. What does this mean? Well, now this says they have to put in that letter in the filing very specifically what it is that you denied them or what kind of barriers were there so clearly that even a layman could understand what that is. You didn't have a ramp, or your front door to your sales office had a 4-inch step up and I'm in a wheelchair, I can't get in. Or whatever, your sales office is one of those temporary sales trailers with stairs. You don't even have ramp access. Whatever it is, they have to be clear now. Okay, real quick, I won't spend time on this, but the lease provision, these are the things that should be in anyone's lease as of July of 2013. Basically, any commercial or multifamily housing, do you have, if you have any vacancies, if you guys are landlords and you have any vacancies, be careful. And if you want to know more about this, I'll talk to you afterwards. I don't waste too much time here on this. All right. So site inspections reduce costs, risks, and costs. I've been doing this a long, long time. In fact, this is how I got to know Terry back when Scott Johnson was suing all these dealers up and down Fulton Avenue and all over the place, all over Sacramento, and it was pretty bad. We've got track history now of clients that have not had site inspections done. They just had me come out. I talked with them a little bit. They went, okay, that's great. Thanks for all your advice. And then they don't do anything. I've got clients that have had CASP inspection reports done, and they still just put it on their shelf. And then that report looks really good right there. I'm going to leave it right there. And they never get into it. They never start any kind of program. And then we have some that have actually gotten their inspection report done. They sat down. They looked at their barriers. They put dollar amounts to it. They looked at their own budget. They coughed. And they went, holy cow, this is going to take a while. And I've got clients now at 7 years, and they're calling me up saying, Chris, I can't believe this. But I got everything done. I'm all done. And I've got disabled people coming here. They're shopping. My tenants are happy. What I get is, I thought it was so overwhelming when I first started. And now I've just been budgeting a little bit every year. A couple of years I had to stop and do some other things. I had some roofing. I had some signage stuff. My monument sign. The city's tearing up the street out front. They had to relocate some stuff, and I had to spend some money there, but they got it done. So here's what I want to talk about. Site inspections provide valuable details for landlords, tenants when removing barriers. If you don't know what your property has and what it doesn't have, you're not in a position to react properly if you do get a lawsuit. What we have found is people that actually have an inspection report and even a set of drawings based on their report, if something happens, you're able to turn around within 24 hours. Now, part of this CASP program is that if you have a CASP inspection report done on your property, you and your property, in essence, are considered a qualified defendant in the court sides. Now, again, this isn't a 100% program here, but this is a lot better than what it used to be, and it's a lot better than what most states have. But what this is if all of a sudden someone comes and files suit on you, you've got a CASP inspection report, and you're somewhere in your program, somewhere, you immediately call your attorney. We get a free appointment with a court-appointed mediator, and we put a 90-day stay. We freeze that plaintiff in place. They can't do anything. They can't return to the property. Their attorney's fees get frozen in place. Nothing increases. They can't come back and do any stacking and find more barriers. They're stuck. I'll tell you this. Plaintiffs, these professional ADA plaintiffs, they hate that. They hate being stopped. They hate being frozen in place. And they're more willing to go ahead and reduce damages and get to an early resolution resolution and get this thing done than to sit there and fight this and get dragged out. Because for every job that they're being frozen on, they can go get 15 more in 1 or 2 days. It's easy for them. So by having that information, you're immediately able to turn around and go, hey, Your Honor, this is my report, here's my cash guide, I've already done all my readily achievable stuff, I put up my signage, and I restriped my stalls, and I put that little crosswalk out to the public sidewalk. My bathroom's got new signage, I added some grab bars, all this cheap and easy stuff. I even used my own screw gun over the weekend. I did all this stuff myself. Got it all done, and here's my plan for all my more expensive items, my non-readily achievable, non-cheap and easy. These are things that I need to kind of budget for and work on. I may have to have a set of drawings. I may have to have a permit to do some of this stuff later, but this is what I'm working on. That kind of stuff matters now. These judges, it's a complete 180 from 1998, 99, 2000, when these judges were like deer in the headlights. These lawsuits are coming up and they're going, I don't like what this guy's doing, but he's perfectly legal, and okay, I'm gonna side for you. Now there's a split mentality between owners and tenants and all that. You got ones that they really don't care. They don't care about this. They don't pay attention. They don't even give a rip about access for their clients. Then you have people that really are doing it. These judges know this. They recognize this. They can see it right off the bat when we start opening up our folders. We open up, I've got post-construction inspection documents that we do for clients once they've done the work. All this stuff comes into play. Now we've got, it's about 18 clients now that have had a lawsuit. They were somewhere in their phase of removing barriers. They still had barriers to go, but because they had this plan and we can prove that they're following this plan, we've had these judges in California go, I like what you're doing. I'm going to reduce all of this. You, Mr. Plaintiff, you get your $4,000. That's it. And only the attorney's fees up to this point, because we already established all this was being worked on, you're out of here. We even had one where the guy, he only had 2 years left of his 7-year phase plan, and the person that sued him found items that were coming up on the very last phase. And we were able to negotiate and say, here's the deal. We'll go ahead and flip-flop these next 2 phases. We'll take care of all these items that you were calling out. You walk away, no fees. No settlement, no attorney's fees, nothing. Out of here. And the judge said, take it or leave it. And so this is a big deal. I mean, California and Florida were the 2 most highly litigious states in the entire union. And we're like sisters when it comes to this ADA stuff. It's bad. And for that to happen here in California, to have that kind of success with the kind of judges that we have here, this is a big deal. So the inspection report allows landlords to split the voluntary removal and permitted 20%. So let me explain this. In California, if you go to pull a permit to do to remodel your showroom or to do whatever, you're going to build a new building, a big mechanics bay or whatever. That's an alteration, addition, structural change. That's a new construction. That's your trigger in California. So whatever the cost of that project is called the adjusted construction valuation cost. In California, we have what's called the ENR threshold, engineering news record. And they use the 20 cities approach where they pull the construction cost and they come up with this valuation. Every year it goes up. Right now it's $147,836. So if you pull a permit for some type of change, modification, or new construction on your property, and you're at that threshold or below, then you're required to spend an additional 20% up and beyond that cost of construction on ADA. So if it's a $100,000 TI, you got to spend an additional 20 grand up and beyond the 100 on ADA somewhere. Now, if you're 250,000, whatever, you're $1 over that threshold, then it's a minimum 20% or up to whatever it takes to bring full compliance to your property without creating disproportionate costs. Now, here's the funny thing. On the federal level, the DOJ, they were supposed to start some kind of group to be the enforcement to enforce ADA, but they didn't have the funds back then. So they went, you know what? We won't do that. We'll just go ahead and leave it up to lawsuits to govern or to enforce this law. Well, California says, no, we can go ahead and enforce it ourselves with our chief building officials. So instead of it being a 20% flat rate on the federal side, California has a minimum maximum, and they leave it up to the chief building official to determine for you how much you can spend and how much is disproportionate cost for you and your budget. So have your numbers straight. Don't try to fudge it. Be real. Most of these guys are pretty logical. Some of them are a little crazy, and they force us to do stuff that really is up and beyond. But for the most part, don't go into the building department and say, oh, this is all I can spend. I'm doing this project. I can't even spend anything over 20%, or I can't even spend 10% on ADA. They're going to laugh at you. So make sure your numbers are all straight. So that's kind of the deal. You got 20% minimum and maximum here in California. Outside of California, it's just a 20% flat rate. But whenever you go to pull some kind of permit to do any kind of addition, alteration, or new construction, they're going to hit you with this. Now, there are items that you can do that are a non-trigger event. That's what we're talking about. With the city, it's a trigger. Until you go to do that, you don't have to do anything as far as the building department is concerned. But don't ignore that the federal side, who they put all of us on notice 25 years ago to always be engaged in readily achievable barrier removal. Now, there's been a couple lawsuits that have settled recently here in California that blow that kind of out of the water, and this is how this goes. JCPenney's, they had known, or the plaintiff proved, that JCPenney's had known for 15 years that they had this non-compliant walkway all the way down in front of their building, and their parking, the slopes were really bad. It was in an area that, you know, a lot of drainage, a lot of slope of the parking lot. Well, because the plaintiff proved that JCPenney's knew for 15 years that they had non-compliant items, they told JCPenney's, you could have been budgeting a little bit every year for 15 years, and thus this really expensive barrier would have been a readily achievable barrier to remove. So now they're dictating to us how much we should, behind the scenes, be budgeting, therefore, to create this non-readily achievable, or a readily achievable barrier removal. So hopefully that makes sense, but basically they can push us now and say, you should have known, and you should have been saving money behind in the background. Even though the state, city, county building department can't force you to do anything, you should have been behind the scenes, and because you didn't, we're going to sue you. So be careful. So readily achievable barriers removed in the first 120 days, that's a rough number. I mean, some it's 60 days, it's something small. Some it takes a lot longer. More costly barriers need to be budgeted and phased carefully during either a triggered permit, right, some kind of alteration, or non-triggered, just your voluntary behind the scenes. You know, you're the business owner. I'm going to go ahead and take care of it. I'm going to put $5,000 into my ADA this year. That's all I can do right now. But I'm going to go ahead and put it in the area that is going to serve me and my clients best. Some striping, some signage, whatever it may be. So barrier removal priorities. This is actually straight from the DOJ. A public accommodation, all of you guys, shall take measures to comply with the barrier removal requirements in the following order. 1, provide access from the public sidewalks, disabled parking, and public bus stops up to all accessible building entrances. And this is, if they can't get to your property, if they can't even get onto your property and park and can't access your cars, then really what's the point? Why go fix up your bathroom first if they can't even pull into your parking lot? So start with the outside. Again, this is the drive-by items too, you guys. This is everything these guys are looking at as they're driving around town. You can have the worst bathroom ever, but they don't see it until they get into your building. But if they can't park on your property, then they can't even get to your services. 2, once inside, provide access to those areas where the goods and services are made available to the public. This may require actually, moving some stuff around. If you've got small, sales offices or anything, you may need to, shift a couple things around, move some plants. Just provide one accessible desk or something where someone parallel approach can come up and sign contracts. If you're doing a long, extended signing, provide the knee clearance. A lot of people don't do that. They just have some desk and they hand someone a wheelchair and clipboard. Don't do that. Give them an area where they can actually, kind of like in a library, a study corral, where they can come up and literally at a table and they can fill out paperwork. And 3rd, provide accessible restrooms. Here's the deal in California. If you already have a restroom, it needs to comply. Even if it's just a restroom that you provide to your employees. With the exception, if you've got a restroom that's out in the mechanics shop area and you have to send that customer through a very dangerous, non-common area, don't do that. But think about this. If you don't have a bathroom right now, California says you don't have to put one in unless you're a specific type of business, restaurants, stuff like that where they serve food. You guys are car dealers, so you're not in the business of providing food or extended entertainment or anything like that. So if you have any questions as you guys move forward, give me a call. You got my information. I like this clicker there. Okay, so technically infeasible. This is a term that people throw around all the time, and I just want to cut right through the fog and tell you guys exactly what this means. An alteration of a building or facility that has little likelihood of being accomplished because the existing structural conditions require the removal or alteration of a load-bearing member that is an essential part of the structural frame, or existing physical site constraints, really bad slope, a hillside right next to your driveway going down to the public right-of-way, whatever it may be. Physical site constraints prohibit modification or alteration of elements, spaces, or features that are in full and strict compliance with the minimum requirements. This is a federal thing. California does recognize this. In new construction, it means nothing. They figure you can do all your grading and backfill and all that, build your site properly. But if you're in an existing facility that was built and first occupied prior to 1990, you're considered an existing complex or an existing facility, and there may be things that are wrong or hard to overcome. So be careful. Most of this kind of stuff, when it comes to technically feasible, what I see, and the reason I bring this up is I get architects and designers and all these people that they just throw this out like Pez candy. Oh, actually, we can't do that. That's technically feasible. It's a sign on the wall. Oh, we can't move that handicap stall over because we'd have to do some striping. That's technically feasible. Okay, it's not technically feasible. So be careful how you use this. Make sure it really is. Make sure it's going to be pretty tough. So undue burdens, a lot of people use this term. This has nothing to do with physical barriers, by the way. If you're a business where you provide services like kids camp, a classroom where people are doing crafts, or some kind of daycare, programs or something like that, that's what this is. When it's very, very difficult to change. So disproportionate cost, this is a federal term only. California has a little twist on this. They call it unreasonable hardship. This does have to do with physical barriers and all that. But I do want to make one comment. Let's say you're dealing with a load-bearing member in your building, and you're needing to relocate or modify your two multi-accommodation men's and women's restrooms inside your dealership. And these things were built small. I mean, they don't even have the 60-inch stall. They don't have any of the wheelchair clearances. So you're having to remodel these and make them bigger. But part of it, there's a load-bearing member. Well, the way the state of California looks at that now is even though there's a load-bearing member that you have to mess with, if the cost to modify that still falls within that 20% required that they're talking about, the ENR threshold, then you got to do it. It's not a burden. You still got to mess with that load-bearing member and move it around and do whatever you need to do if it falls within that 20%. So be careful. We just evaluated a Volvo dealership building up in Sacramento a couple weeks ago, and there was some issues, and this is a pretty new building, but there was some issues that they weren't going to be able to overcome very easily. So we came up with some ideas that brought the path of travel through a different area and bypassed this whole really bad area, and the guy wound up just flip-flopping it, parking cars there to sell, and just covered up this bad sloped area. Now the funny thing is, this building was built maybe 5 years ago. It should have been built. So one, it wasn't built right, it was inspected by the city, and they missed it, and they signed it off, and they let this thing go. And now here's this new owner buying the dealership and the building, and he's inheriting these issues. So what do you do? Now, if he wouldn't have had an inspection report done, he would have never known, and he would have just kept on doing business like the original guy, and he could have had some real problems out there. So, disproportionate costs, federal term only. Alterations made to provide an accessible path of travel to an altered area will be deemed disproportionate to the overall alteration when the cost exceeds 20% of the cost of the alteration, right? Well, obligation if the cost is disproportionate. When the cost of alterations necessary to make the path of travel to the altered area fully accessible is disproportionate to the cost of the overall alteration, then the path of travel shall be made accessible to the extent that it can be without incurring disproportionate costs. That's a mouthful. What's that really mean? That means you're spending at least 20% on ADA on any kind of project that you're going to do. If it's under the threshold, it's 20%. If it's over the threshold, it's a minimum 20%, or whatever that chief building official deems appropriate for you to spend. And that's really what it is here in California. So trigger event for 20%. NETI, we talked about this. NETI, new construction property improvement, is a trigger at the local building department level. The adjusted construction valuation of the improvement determines that 20% spent on ADA. Full compliance required within the altered area. So whatever area you're building, it has to be fully compliant. But see, there's two laws, there's two rules that are kicking in here, and a lot of people don't know this. They think, well, I'm building out this mechanics bay. This is all I need, this is it. This is all I gotta do, right? No, that's the altered area. You gotta bring full compliance to that altered area. But then you have the other code that says you must provide an accessible path of travel to the altered area. Well, if you're a tenant, you don't own your building. Most of the time tenants go, that's not my problem. That's my landlord's problem. Don't even talk to me about that. I'm just doing my job over here. Well, all of a sudden the inspector comes out at the very end and he's going to do a sign off, and this is where they're not helping us at all because they miss this all the time. They wait until the inspector comes out at the very end to do the sign off to give you your certificate of occupancy on that project, and they go, where's your 20%? Where's your path of travel? And the tenant's going, what are you talking about? No one ever told me anything. You guys approved my plans, gave me my permit, I built it, we're done. I want my sign off, I'm ready to do business. Sorry, where's your path of travel to this altered area? You better get your landlord on the phone. Now the landlord's hopping mad. And now he's being threatened by his tenant who's going, I need my certificate of occupancy. I gotta get going. You're holding me up, Mr. Landlord. And the landlord's going, hey, knucklehead, you didn't even tell me you were pulling this permit and doing this project, and you didn't even tell me that it was gonna pull me into it. So be careful. This stuff, it's all the time. 2 codes. Everything in the altered area must comply, and the path of travel servicing that altered area must comply. So 20% additional spent on access along the path of travel servicing the altered area. The tenant usually responsible for all access items on the inside, and the landlord's always usually responsible. Here in California, landlord's always responsible no matter what. Even if your lease agreement says that your tenant's going to take all the responsibility financially. I'm telling you right now, I've been in too many lawsuits where the landlord, even with a rock solid lease, that judge went, you're paying, and he did. So non-triggered event. So we've talked about what happens when we pull a permit here in California, what they're requiring of us. What about this voluntary stuff? What about our CAS program? We don't have to go pull permits usually for doing little ADA items. Well, what do we do? These are non-triggered events. So the landlord identifies all readily achievable. This is what you want in your report. And whether you hire me or whether you don't even hire anyone, what you really do want to know is what your property has and what it doesn't have. If you know that, now you've got logical details to start the program, to start actually putting together a game plan to protect yourself. Again, why would we want to go give a $50,000 van conversion vehicle for free to somebody just to open up our business? Well, that's what we're doing by not paying attention to some of this stuff. You ask anyone that's really been sued, any car dealer that's really gone down that road, and they'll tell you it sucks. I mean, it's 80 grand, it's 100 grand. By the time everything's said and done, attorney's fees, and all the accelerated barrier removal that's dictated by the early resolution. What you may put together in your overall readily achievable voluntary barrier removal plan, it may take you 7 years. Well, you get sued because you didn't take care of those little small readily achievable items. Now the settlement agreement may force you to fix 4 years worth of barriers that you're going to do over 4 years. Force you to do it all in 1 year or 6 months. It's bad. I've seen people go, I can't believe this. I was going to spend 25 grand this year on ADA. Now I'm spending 80 on ADA, plus another 40 in attorney's fees, plus it's really bad. So you want to make sure that you're on top of this. So establish a list of non-readily achievable barriers that are costly to remove and separate the 2 lists. So here it is in a nutshell. You got cheap and easy barriers, and you got expensive barriers. You got items that you'll want to take care of yourself without hurting yourself financially, and then there's items that you're going to need to budget for. These are items that you want to now split up. If you know that you've got some kind of big project on the horizon coming, you're going to build out a big mechanics bay, you're going to blow out your sales floor and add all these offices for new sales associates, and you're growing your business, and you know that you're about ready to pull this permit and that trigger's coming down from the city, don't just voluntarily go rip out all that concrete and fix stuff up. Save that, because now you want those monies to apply towards those barriers to hit your 20% DNR with the city. Does that make sense? So they're going to force you to do it. So why voluntarily go do it ahead of time? They don't know about it. And all of a sudden you go to pull this permit to do this project. They go, okay, 20%. And you go, I just spent 80 grand on all this stuff voluntarily. Well, that was on you, sucker. Now you got to spend more. So here's what I tell all my clients. Communicate with the building department. I know you guys have a real love for them, but communicate with them. Okay, say, hey, I had a CAS inspection report done. I got my barrier list right here. I put dollar amounts to it. I am a good guy. I'm going to voluntarily remove these barriers, but I don't want to get in the shorts from you guys in the building department. So here's what I want. I want an agreement with you that every dime I spend voluntarily on ADA is saved on an account to apply towards future ENR 20% up to 3 years. What they'll give you. I had one city chief building official that denied this of my client, and literally this guy goes, I'm about ready to spend $180,000 in a 3-year period voluntarily on ADA barrier removal, and you're saying that you won't allow me to save those monies on an account to apply towards TIs that are happening on my property? And so he made one phone call to a local TV station and said, yeah, the chief building official, his name is so-and-so, and he hates disabled, and he doesn't want anybody to remove barriers voluntarily. They would rather just stay non-compliant and wait. And the crap storm that happened from that, and the very next day, that chief building official was like, hey, wait, I didn't mean no, I meant okay. And so he agreed. So unless you ask, you won't know. And sometimes they don't understand this because in their world, they never deal with us until we pull a permit, right? Unless we've got something wrong on our property and code enforcement rules fines that move that or do whatever. But other than that, they're not messing with us. So all of a sudden we come to them with something that's very strange for them. All these building inspectors, all they know is trigger event. You're pulling a permit, what are you gonna do? They don't know how to react when people like us come and say, hey, we're gonna remove barriers voluntarily. But I don't want to take it in the shorts and not get credit for it if I'm going to be pulling some permits later. So it's a big deal. We already talked about this. Let's keep going. So here it is. Here's the top 10 most common barriers. This is from the California Disability Access Commission. This is something that I've actually gone through over the years. I document and keep track of all these things that people are being sued for. I literally read through these alleged list of violations, these lawsuits. It's the same thing over and over and over. I can't tell you. And some of these, they get really creative. They start launching into this, I was extremely embarrassed. And you embarrassed me. And when I got home, I was just emotionally crushed from being denied accessing the property. And I haven't been able to make love to my wife like my wedding vows dictate. So now I want, $250,000 for loss of consortium, and they give it to me. And it's incredible. The stuff that goes on in these courts. And it all starts because you didn't have a van sign up, you didn't have the striping in your parking lot, and you didn't have the little path of travel leading from the public right of way. This is where it starts, you guys. So loading zones and van access aisles lack required 2%, so that's a slope thing. Existing disabled stalls lack the 2% slope, striping layouts, non-compliant or missing parking signs, incorrect number of disabled parking stalls. Most of you guys probably don't have, hundreds and hundreds of parking stalls, so you probably need at least that one single van stall. If you've got over 50 stalls, then you're going to need two disabled. But most of the time, you're not getting into this huge ratio of over 6 disabled stalls unless you're a really big dealership. Insufficient path of travel from parking and the public sidewalk. That is huge. Here's the deal. The feds actually have 2 exceptions in the code that talks about a path of travel requirement to a property from the public right of way. And a lot of lobbyists tried to get the feds to remove these 2 exceptions, but they denied them. And they said, we're going to leave them in there because we feel that they're going to be used on such a very rare occasion that for the most part it doesn't matter. And what it is if you don't actually have a public sidewalk provided by the city or county that runs at least along one part or one side of your property, if you don't have that, you're not required to put in an off-site path of travel. It's like the stairway in the Winchester Mystery House. It goes up and opens up to a block wall. That's, in essence, what they've been forcing people to put in these path of travel out to nowhere, out to a dirt shoulder, to a soft shoulder of the road. Okay, you don't have to do that. Unless you have a public sidewalk out front, you don't have to do that. Now, if you do have a public sidewalk, it's required. Now, if you're an existing facility with a lot of topography and elevation change, this could be expensive and it could be devastating, especially here in California where we got to remove, mature redwood trees or some oak trees to try to put this path in. Now we got these codes telling us one thing, but we got the city-sanctioned arborist who's coming along going, don't touch that tree. You can't even look at that branch. Don't even talk to that tree. I mean, they're bad, and they'll get you. So we've had people fine $10,000 per tree, and the tree was no bigger than 6-inch diameter trunk. I mean, you could have still went and bought a tree at the nursery, how big this thing was. So entry doors non-compliant, lacking the ISA. This is cheap and easy. This is that little sticker, blue background with a wheelchair on it. Slap that on your front window, right adjacent to your front door. That's one of the items they call out all the time. Non-compliant or lacking curb ramp access to the walkway, protruding objects, pole mounted. We got all kinds of stuff. We got benches, we got plastic trees, we got all kinds of stuff that people stack along the path of travel. Move all those out of there. Just always think, take a broom handle, cut it at 48 inches. Grab it in the middle and just walk along your path. If you're constantly moving cars around, you got that path coming in from the public right of way, but your guys that are moving cars around and going and grabbing them from overflow lots and doing whatever, make sure that path stays clear. Tell them, don't park cars on this thing. Because if you stick the front of that car over that line, someone comes along and sees it, that's the beginning of just a huge problem for me. So keep that clear. A lot of people like Home Depot and Safeway and Save Mart, they'll even take up the entire walkway in front of their store and put Christmas trees out and seasonal stuff, flowers. I've even got pictures that I use in presentations where here's this dual van set, huge, and the grocery store put their little wooden fence, you know, with the cinder blocks, and stacked all these racks with potting soil and flowers, and they literally covered up the entire disabled parking stall set in front of their store, and all you can see was just the back end of the little ISA symbols. They wiped out their parking by plants and trees, so then they got sued. Insufficient width or non-continuous path of travel to all spaces. Again, this is your path of travel leading from a public right-of-way, getting them up to your front door. They got to be able to get to your product. Now, here's one question that I get from a lot of auto dealers, where they say, do I have to have a continuous path of travel out throughout all of my cars that I have on display? No, you don't. And if you've got a really tight lot, which most do, we've got a lot of inventory, what you can do, this goes back to policies and procedures. You get someone that's disabled in your shop, they're looking at a vehicle, they want to look at various cars, have one of your guys run and get one of them and pull them up. Hey, what do you want to look at? I'll bring them to you right here, as opposed to going all over my lot that could have, you know, potholes or uneven surface slopes and all that. And I'm telling you guys, there are people that this is their job. They make it's an art for them. They will go to your site and go, look at all that surface slope. I want to go look at that car way back there. Here we go. And they start going. And they literally get themselves into a situation where they're creating this environment of being denied access so they can turn around and sue you. They never wanted that car from you. They wanted your money. And this is how they do it. So freestanding barriers during seasonal times placed by tenants. We talked about that. It's a big deal. So how to reduce risk and cost and understand. This thing. You're right, Larry. This thing's built backwards. So non-trigger event ADA upgrades. Landlord identifies all readily achievable barriers and removes them within 90 to 120 days. Establish a list of readily achievable barriers. So again, it goes back to have your property inspected. I mean, it costs a little bit of money, but the money that you're going to save in knowing exactly what you do have and what you don't have, and that's the key too. It may look ugly, but it may be compliant. Don't change it. Don't rip it out unless you want to aesthetically fix it up. But when we go out and evaluate properties, we're always looking for what's actually compliant too, so that we can build from that. There's no sense in spending money where we don't need to. So create that list. What's readily achievable, what's not. Remove your cheap and easy ones yourself, or call your neighbor, or your handyman, or whatever, your contractor. And then the stuff that's more expensive, start budgeting for it. But if you don't know, then there's no way you can actually start budgeting for it. And I'm telling you, these reports, the plans that we do, and the post-construction inspection documents, they are all used. We get subpoenaed, and they're used in court to fight the activists and to help out on the defense to establish a clear trail of being proactive. When business owners are actually doing this and they're moving forward, and they have documentation, and these judges, these mediators, they know. I mean, you try to put a bunch of information together and documentation overnight and try to fool them, they know. When they see this stuff, and they see that you've been doing this work, you've got your post-construction inspections, it goes a long way. Because, like I said, there's been, the 15 years, the paradigm shift has happened. The attitude now by these judges are you one of the proactive ones, or are you one that you're just an ostrich with your head in the sand and you're just ignoring it? So be careful. Okay, okay. Sorry guys, this clicker is backwards. So a proven successful system, and again, this is just kind of my own, but I see it even with other firms that I deal with on a national level. By following this program, this is what we see working time and time again, whether it's in court or out of court. Have a hazard inspection report done detailing all existing levels of access. Identify your readily achievable barriers, put them over in one column, and you want to address those first. Create a split list of the costly barriers, the more expensive ones, and plan to remove them very cautiously. Don't just jump at this thing. I've seen people get sued and they freak out and they start throwing all kinds of money and trying to remove these barriers before really figuring out what they need to do and where to put that money. And then they get told later, hey, it's good that you spent all that money, but it's bad you spent it wrong. You built that didn't even need to get done. And that you just built, that's not even done right. And the contractor that did it, he didn't understand ADA, and you just told him to go ahead and put this thing in. And so be careful, get your information, get all your details straight, and work from a plan that's actually, solid. Detailed site plan indicator. This is something that we actually came up with a few years ago. We have a lot of female property managers that will take their report and they'll go do these job walks with contractors. Well, they don't like one printing out this huge report that's flopping in the wind and they're handing this report over to contractors where only a certain part of this report is really for these asphalt guys, concrete guys. So we take a site plan, do a recreate in AutoCAD, take the report and all the scoping that's at the bottom of each location. And that's, if you guys have a report done, you'll see, as you're reading this thing, a lot of my clients, they just go to the back. They go to the end and go, what's my scoping? Okay, stripe this, install this, sock up demo this. They don't really care about all the other stuff. They just go right to the scoping. We take all that and post it on this big site plan with all your little keynote numbers. So now you can just walk out to your property, you can look at this thing and go, what do I need to do? So there's a site plan indicator for doing job walks, construction plans produced for access. And this is based on our report, so all the details there. And then post-construction inspections. I can't tell you, even if you don't hire a CASP inspector, even if you don't have a set of drawings done, and you just call your neighbor's friend who's an asphalt guy or a concrete guy, have that work inspected right when he's done. Know if that is actually done compliantly. And we've already talked about the building inspectors. And I'm not trying to bag on them, but I see it day in and day out. These guys come out, they gloss over, they don't really look at stuff, and they sign off. And now we're thinking, hey, we're good, right? And we got signed off by the city. That's all that really matters, right? I'm going to pay my contractor. His taillights are out of sight. That thing's non-compliant. You have no recourse. And now you get sued, and you're thinking, I was compliant, now you're not. Bad. Okay, manage that plan, evaluate your facility for compliance with state and federal, and that's key. A lot of guys that are running around California right now, they're Title 24 inspectors, and all they're doing is calling out Title 24. They're missing the boat. The feds have so many items in their codes that we don't. Even with the new 2013 California Building Code being very, very close to the federal standards, there's still items that we didn't put into our codes. We still cherry picked. And then there's actually provisions in Title 24 that go up and beyond the Fed. So it's back and forth. But if you're not looking at both, and even beyond that, we evaluate based on the international building codes, ANSI standards, American National Standards, Title 24, and the federal ADA, all of it together. And then when we go into other cities, Phoenix and Scottsdale and Denver and Edgewater and Aurora and Miami and Fort Lauderdale, we literally contact the local building department and find out what their own city or county codes are and overlay them into what we're evaluating. Because their state code may have certain things, but the city is actually unique and they've got more provisions that you would know about. Obtain multiple bids to structure and access budget. Document all this stuff. This is part of your paperwork. If you ever get sued, you want to be able to open this up and go, Your Honor, I got my report, I got my barriers, I got all my dollar amounts, here's some bids from contractors, I've already gone out and removed all that stuff, I'm budgeting behind the scenes, and my next phase is coming up next year. All this is all your defense. This is all a paper trail. You want this. Overwhelm these guys with paperwork. I got people that go, hey, they call me, hey Chris, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to record our conversation because I want to keep all this for evidence. Okay, fine. Then I got to watch what I say on the phone. But, people document all this stuff. Every email with me, every phone call, every site visit, they'll have me out. We'll walk a certain section of their shopping center. They document all of it. But it all comes out in court, and it all helps them if that ever happens. Okay, and real quick, I want to make sure we're good on time here. We're not. Okay, you guys, I've got a whole section here that's some of the changes coming down in July to the existing current 2013 California Building Code. These are big deals, but any of you have access to my office. I've got my card and I've got some information on CASP back at my table. Here's what I want to throw out to you guys. All of you are entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a small business owner. I love you guys. Any help you guys need, any questions, any kind of design ideas, anything you got the weirdest thing going on in your property, you call my office. Brian Piazza is my office manager out of headquarters in Folsom. John and Jonathan, they are accessibility gurus, and they're back in the design department. Any questions, free of charge. We're not going to sit there and start the timer and what's your credit card number like some of these other guys. You call, we can answer your questions. You got weird things going on, the city's telling you something, it doesn't seem right. You're looking to take over another building and buy some business that's going out. You're going to take over an existing facility and you just want, you know what, can I meet you out there? Can you meet me on this site? And let's just walk and talk for 15, 20 minutes. Tell me what you see. even before biting off on any kind of report. And you may not need a report. We may meet and walk and talk for 30 minutes, and I can give you great advice on where to go with this building, what to do, and what you should do. So I don't want to take up too much time. You guys, thank you for showing up. I know ADA is kind of one of those things. It's almost like a life insurance seminar or HR. But you know, I hope to bring a little bit of humor to it. But I really wanted you guys to know this is the environment of California. We do have some plans. We do have some procedures that can help you, but you have to work it. If you don't work it, then we're just hanging out there for the next guy to come along and sue us. So you guys, thank you very much.